With the caret package, we also have the possibility to do attribute selection, but specifically I'm going to use two functions that are very useful and that are within this package. The first one is the one to identify variables in a database that has that doesn't have too much variance. So this function can be called with this command near zero var. So what this does is try and identify variables that have values that repeat often. So in quantitative and also numerical variables. So these variables should not have too much variability because these won't help too much in the model. These are irrelevant variables. So to do this, we just call the function and we write the name of the data. So it's telling me that I don't have 0. This means that all variables have some variability, but just as a test, I'm going to create a variable that does not have that variability. So I'm going to indicate a new variable called country país, Colombia. So everything that's in this column is the same because all of these are data from the same country. So this is not going to help any the model. It's just going to create additional noise. So if we use this function in near zero, it's going to tell us that position 27 is a variable that has low variability. The same thing happens if a numerical variable does not have too much variability in the values that it contains. So it'll identify them, and this is a way to start and remove variables that don't help. On the other hand, sometimes correlations within the variables can become additional noise. They're included here in the database. So what we assess sometimes is the Pearsall correlation in these numerical variables. And we try to identify which are correlated, and among those two, just choose one. So caret also has a function that's wonderful for doing this process. So first of all, this only applies for numerical variables because we're working on the Pearson correlation. So we have to do the filter first. We can do it this way. This numerical data, we use select if with a specific criterion. We include the data, our matrix, and then we tell it's numerical. So this will bring up only the numerical columns. Let's check them. Here it is. So num datos only has the columns that are numbers. We could also remove yield because it's a response variable and it's supposed to have variability. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to remove yield and I'm going to see how many columns they have. Numeric data, it's got 21. So I'm going to remove yield and I would like my variables to be correlated with yield. So I'm going to tell it to remove 21 and I'm going to calculate my correlation matrix. So core num datos, it's a very simple function that most of you know. Core means correlation. Numerical data, numerical datos. It tells me that X should be numerical. So I'm going to read it once again. No, apparently I did something wrong here. I'm going to execute it once again from here. Yeah, the things that I wrote data, but it's not data per se. It's the same name, num datos. I'm just updating. Now I don't have any problems. So let's go over the correlations. We see we have 0.80, some low correlations too, but 0.73, 0.90. So these are climate variables that are probably closely correlated. So caret helps me to identify those variables that are correlated. And the way to do this is I'm going to save these results first in course vars with this function that's called find correlation from caret. And I'm going to indicate the correlation matrix, and I'm going to tell it where my cut limit is going to be off, my cutoff limit, to consider that a correlation is very high between two variables. So I'm going to say it's 0.7. So that's one of the standards that we use in the project. Control Enter, and let's see what's left in core bars. There you go. These are the positions of the variables that are candidates to be removed. So this carries out an internal process to choose between two variables that are correlated and choose just one of them. So between those two variables that are correlated, it's going to just leave one in the database, and the other one is suggesting me to remove it. It suggests me to remove the variables that are simultaneously correlated with the other variables. So it just gets an average of the correlation between the other variables and tells me between these two, you better choose this one instead of that one. So that would be the way to do it with carets. It's two steps that I use almost every time for my models, because it allows me to filter the variables that are on one side irrelevant, that have low variability, and the other one, on the other hand, they are redundant.